Hello everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another painting tutorial, and today we are painting Sons of the Angel, Sons of Baal, but we're not painting the Blood Angels, no, we are painting the Flesh Tearers. And this is really going to be really exciting because the Flesh Tearer scheme is really cool. So, without further ado, we're going to jump straight into the painting. This guy has been primed in Grey Seer, and the colour that we're going to be using is Flesh Tearers Red. There's a surprise. Now what we want to do, take a fair whack of this on our brush, like that. And I'm using a medium layer brush from Citadel, and we're just going to start painting this all over his armour. I just want to go nice and steady as we do this, making sure we finish off each section and using very smooth paint strokes or brush strokes. Generally sticking towards the tip of the brush so we get lots of control. Use lots of controlled movements as well. Now, when painting the Flesh Tearers, the shoulder pads, the chest eagle, and the backpack are not Flesh Tearers red. They're not red at all. They're in flat black. So what we want to do is we're going to leave those as they are. Right now, we're going to do those slightly differently. As I say, we're just going all over with this Flesh Tearers red like this. Just being really careful. Getting a nice smooth finish. Just using the brush to mop up any excess. Just carefully remove any streak lines that we might have. So you want to be very careful and considered with it, but you also want to go reasonably quickly so that whilst it's still wet, you can move the paint around. with that done, what we now want to do is we want to take some Basilicanum Grey and we want to coat this over all of the black armour details. So this is going to be areas like his helmet that's down here on his belt, but also his shoulder pads and the backpack as well. Now the Basilicanum Grey is going to act as our pre-shade, so that when we put the black on, it comes out nice and dark. Just want to get a good even coverage of this Basilicanum Grey all over like this. And then we'll come back. So with that Basilicanum Grey applied, what we now want to do is we want to take some black Templar and we want to colour over the top of all of that Basilicanum Grey that we've just added, like so. And with that black Templar applied, what we now want to do is we want to just revisit that red, because what we want to do is we want to really enrich that colour. And so the colour that we're going to make is a roughly 8 parts contrast medium to 1 part Khorne Red mix. And this is going to give us a really nice thin little glaze that we're now going to use over the top of the flats of our armour panels, just to really kind of bring it down and make it look super flesh tearersy. So what we want to do is we just want to very carefully use this Khorne Red glaze over the flats of our panels, and we want to just try and avoid any recesses and any edges so that we retain all of that contrasting goodness. What we do is we just make that red really kind of very, very rich and deep. And so with that done, you should now have this beautifully dark red armour, which just looks really smooth and really rich. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use some black Templar. I'm going to use this to colour in all of the remaining black details, such as the soft joints in his armour and the chest aquila and the weapon casing on his bolt pistol. And with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some thinned down Iron Warriors. I'm going to use this to paint in all of the silver details on our Flesh Terror Space Marine. And next up, we're going to use some Retributor Armour to paint in all of the gold details. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Skeleton Horde. I'm going to use this to paint in the parchment on our Purity Seal. And with that done, we want to use some Volupus Pink. Not very much, just a small amount. We want to use this to paint in, firstly, the soft grip here on his pistol. Pistol? That's a combat knife. Good lord. What we also want to do with this Volupus Pink is paint in the wax seal. And next up, we're going to use some Apothecary White on all of our white details. And this is going to be the rosary beads going down here, but also the chapter icon on his shoulder. And next up with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some Blood Angels Red. I'm going to use it on the teardrop just here. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to use some Basilicanum Grey. I'm going to use this to shade all of our metallics, including the gold, because we want a nice kind of dark metal, well, a worn out gold. These are flesh tearers. They're not particularly gaudy. So you want to do this all over the gold and all over the silver as well. And so with that done, what we're now going to do, just before we do that face, is we are going to go back and get the rest of the model all finished, and then we can just focus straight on that face and get him finished. So that means we're going to do a lot of highlighting. So the first colour that we're going to be using is Wazdakka Red. And we're going to be using this on all of his red armour. So what we want to do is you just want to take a small amount of this on our brush and just start picking out all those edges. Now, it's not going to look like it's doing much initially. But what it is going to do is it's going to make that red highlight very consistent all the way around the model. And this sets us up nicely for when we do our little spot highlight. Like so. With that Wazdakka Red all applied, what we now want to do is we want to take some Cadian Fleshtone, which might sound weird, but it really works. So we take the Cadian Fleshtone, we add this to the sharpest corners of our red armour. Just like that. And so with that done, what we now want to do is we want to use some Stormvermin Fur. And we want to use this to highlight all of the black armor panels. Don't want to do the Aquila or the gun. I want to do those slightly differently. For the armor panels, we kind of want a nice dirty highlight. And that's what Stormvermin Fur is perfect for. And with that done, just before we add any spot highlights to that black armor, what we want to do is we want to take some Dawnstone. We want to use this to highlight the other black details. So areas like that Aquila and the gun. And these skulls down here, for example. And so with that done, what we now want to do is we want to take some Administratum Grey and we want to add this as a spot highlight to all the sharpest areas on all of the black details. So for example, here on the shoulder pad, we want to do a little bit of Administratum Grey there in the corner, but we also want to add this to the sharpest areas on that stuff that we just did with the Dawnstone as well. Like that. And next up, we're going to use some Liberator Gold to highlight all of our gold details. So with that gold highlighted, what we're now going to do is going to use some Iron Hand Steel. I'm going to use this to highlight all of our silver details. Now, typically, what we're going to do is just going to pick out the edges on areas like that, just there. Whereas what we want to do on the knife, is just want to use Iron Hand Steel all along the cutting edge of the blade, like so, to give us basically this transition from a sharp blade to the dark body of it. And then what we do is we highlight the blunt end edge of the blade as well, just like that. So it gives us that kind of, that type of thing going on there, which just looks really cool. So we're going to go around like this, and then we're going to come back. And then next up, what we do is we take some Stormhost Silver, and we just run that along the sharp cutting edge of our combat blade, just like that. And next up, we want to take some Corax White. We want to use this to highlight our white details. So I'm going to pick out areas like these rosary beads here. As well as pick out the edges of our Flesh Terrors icon. Like that. So with that done, our Flesh Terror is very nearly complete. So all that's left to do is his face and his hair. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take some Guilliman Flesh on our brush. I'm going to use this to paint in the skin. And we want to take a fair amount of this on our brush. Kind of like that much. And I'm using a small layer brush to do this. What we want to do is we want to go very carefully, very quickly, just get this Guilliman Flesh all over all of that skin. Just try to be careful not to get it all over the hair. As I say, you do just want to move quite quickly so it doesn't dry and give you a kind of weird transition line in a place that you don't want it. So just keep that paint moving until you've got all of the skin painted in like that. And then just use your brush to just absorb any extra. So For example, if there's too much, it's usually round here in the eyes, pits of the eyes I should say, where it gets stuck usually. Like that. There we go. I'm happy with that. And next up, what we're going to do is just to take this face a little bit further, and I had a lot of fun doing it on Uriel Ventress, so I wanted to do it again. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow, a little bit of a stubbly beard to his face. Now the colour we're going to make is a roughly 2 parts contrast medium. Well, it can be a 1 or 2 parts contrast, it depends how thin you want it, but I'm this time going to be doing 2 parts contrast medium to 1 part Basilicanum Grey mix. This gives us a lovely thin grey. What we want to do is we'll take a small amount of this on our brush, and we want to very steadily build this effect up around his chin, just adding this Basilicanum Grey like this. And then once we've got it kind of where we want it, I'm just going to leave that to dry just for about 10 minutes. So with that done, what we now want to do is we want to use the exact same mix again. So a roughly 2:1 contrast medium to Basilicanum Grey mix. And this time, we just want to keep it more concentrated towards the bottom of his face. So you get that gradual fade down. Just like that. And with that done, what we now want to do is take some Flayed One Flesh. We want to highlight all of the sharp details of his face. So areas like his nose, his nostril. We want to get some of this on the lips, as well as his cheekbones, his brow, and alongside that scar as well. And with that done, what we now want to do is take a small amount of black Templar, and we want to apply this very carefully underneath his eyelids. Just like that. And with that done, we want to use a small amount of Volupus Pink. Really tiny amount. And firstly, what we want to do is we want to run this down his inside of his scar. Just like that. We grab a little bit more Volupus Pink. Very carefully do that like that, and then what we do is take a small amount of Volupus Pink and we add this over the top of his lips and his tongue. Just like that. And then next up, we want to use a tiny amount of Screaming Skull. And this is firstly to colour in his teeth, which we can see just shining in there, as well as the bottom row of teeth just here. And we also want to use this to colour in the whites of his eyes. And lastly, just to finish off those eyes, we want to take a small amount of black Templar. We just want to add a dot of this right in the middle, like that. And so with that done, what we now want to do is paint his hair. Now I'm going to give him a lovely dark brown haircut. So the colour I'm going to be using is Wyldwood. Just want to be very careful that I don't get this on that skin. Just like that. And with that done, what we now want to do is take some Baneblade Brown. And we want to use this to highlight that hair. So with that done, he's looking pretty awesome. So what we're going to do now is just got two more areas to finish off. We've got the lens, well, not lens, the Flesh Terror's gem there in the middle of the logo, and we've also got the lenses on his helmet just under there. So what we're going to do first is we're going to work on that Flesh Terror's teardrop. What we want to do, after we did that Blood Angel's red, what we're going to do is we're going to take some Wyldwood, and from the very top we just want to draw this Wyldwood over the top until about 3/4 of the way around. And then just in a circular motion, pull it out so there's a little bit of this Blood Angel's red still shining through at the bottom, like that. And with that done, what we then do is we take some Fire Dragon Bright and we add this as a highlight around that bottom right corner. Just like that. And then just to finish that gem off, what we do is we take a small dot of Corax White and we add it to the very top. Like that. And so with that done, what we now want to do is we want to take some Warpstone Glow and we want to add this to the eye lenses on his helmet, on his belt. And what we want to do is we just want to draw a little of this green line going down the middle of the helmet. Just like that. We don't want to fill the whole thing in. And next up we want to use a small amount of Moot Green to add a little highlight to the front half of that green eye lens, just like that. And then lastly, just to finish that off, we want to take a small amount of Corax White and just add a little dot in the top corner. Like that. With those eye lenses complete, our Flesh Terror is now finished and he looks awesome. So all that's left to do is his base, and the colour I'm going to be using is Astro Granite, but as always I recommend that you do this in the same style as the rest of your army. And so with our base all complete, our Flesh Terror is ready to rip and tear his way across the Red Scar in support of Dante. That's where they are right now, the Flesh Terrors, having a absolute ball fighting the Tyranids. They didn't have a ball fighting the Tyranids at Baal, but they're having fun doing it now because they've got a lot more of them now. They're no longer a dying chapter. They are reinforced by the Primaris, and this is what we've done today. We've reinforced the Flesh Terrors with our own Primaris Intercessor. It's a lot of fun. The deep arterial red of their armour is really, really cool, as well as that kind of that black shoulder pads and backpack and all that kind of stuff. It just creates such a lovely contrast. It's really an iconic scheme. It's just lovely to look at, and it's a lot of fun to do as well. I'm going to try not to repaint all my Blood Angels as Flesh Terrors now. If you enjoyed this one and you'd like to support me further like these legends on the screen, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all of that good stuff, and if you'd like to stay up to date, make sure to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.